It, commonly referred to as Stephen King's It for easy reference, is a two-part 1990 TV movie with a total runtime of around 3 hours, all things told, and the story itself revolves around an ensemble cast, or to be more specific, two separate ensemble casts playing the same characters, because the first half of It revolves around these characters when they are children. They are outcasts, misfits, if you will, and some strange and disturbing happenings begin to happen in their small town, revolving around an ominous clown called Pennywise, an iconic horror movie monster, and for good reason, played of course by Tim Curry, my personal favourite role of his and one of my favourite horror movie characters of all time, Pennywise the Dancing Clown. And the second portion of the film revolves around the same characters when they are adults, when they are forced to return to their small town based on a promise that they made to each other to deal with a potential resurgence of this evil Pennywise. And I cannot stress enough how much I love this movie. I only saw it relatively recently. I wanted to see it for quite a while, but just never got around to it, and I'm so glad that I did, because I absolutely love it. Now, Stephen King, in a number of his movies, has a clear precedent for having stories that revolve around kids who aren't necessarily the most popular kids, reinforcing each other's confidence, supporting each other, oftentimes working against bullies in one form or another, and really going on journeys, not necessarily immense physical journeys, but emotional ones. And that is the case in this film as well. This one just so happens to have an amazing horror movie monster in there also. Now, as I said, I love this movie, and I'm not going to go into it anymore, because obviously I'll begin to spoil things. So let's go straight into my ratings. First of all, of course, as always, we have the story and the plot. And for the story and plot, I'm going to give it a 10, because quite frankly, I think this film is perfect. The story is easy to follow, but at the same time you get more out of it every time you watch it. You notice clues, tidbits here and there that are dropped which clue you in more and more each time you watch it as to what's actually happening with these characters. All of the characters play fantastic roles, especially I would say in the first half, not because it's necessarily better than the second half, but because I just don't usually like child actors. I find them very annoying. These child actors are brilliant, and I value that. So, as far as the story and the plot, the way it works in these characters, the way it incorporates Pennywise into the plot, the way it culminates, the way it starts, and everything in between, to me is just everything that I wanted it to be, and everything that I didn't know I wanted it to be. So it's a 10. As far as the people, the characters, the motivations, etc., well, fairly obviously leading on from the previous rating, I'm also giving that a 10. For the aforementioned child actors and the fantastic performances that they give, but also the adult versions of them. Some people have said that the second half of It isn't as strong, doesn't hold up as well, and although I can understand why they would say that, it is a little slower, there's less Pennywise in the second half, you do still need that second half. The story isn't finished without it, and I enjoy the whole thing. This isn't a two-part film where I only watch one part of it. If I watch the first half, I must watch the second. I enjoy them both very much. You can't really have one without the other. So for the characters, their motivations, etc., it's a 10. As far as the visuals, the effects used, special effects, the general look of the film, well, it's a 1990 TV movie, so it's not necessarily going to be rivaling some Marvel film from now in terms of the amazing cinematography, camera effects, etc., but it's good. The special effects that are used, although they're not all the time, are convincing. There's a great use of stop motion on at least one primary occasion in the film, and I love the way the film looks overall. Most of it is a real looking film. It feels lived in, it feels like real scenarios, real situations, and I like that. Overall, for the visuals and effects, I'm going to give the film an 8, because although they are very good, the special effects, for instance, are relatively few and far between, but when they do happen, they're good quality, and there's only really one primary section of the second part of it, which kind of hurts that rating a little bit. And those who have seen this will probably know what I'm talking about. As far as the audio, the soundtrack, just the general audio quality of the film, etc., I'm going to also give it another 8, because the music is great, especially when Pennywise is around. The music doesn't really grab you in the way of something like The Hateful Eight or The Thing or something like that, but it does the job. It is memorable, and the overall sound design of the film doesn't really need to do anything special most of the time, but when it does need to, it does it well. And finally, of course, for the most subjective, to me personally, as with any of these reviews, the rewatchability and entertainment factor. And I would love to give it a 10 in this regard. I really would. I absolutely love this film, but the only thing that hurts it is the runtime. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 for rewatchability and entertainment, and the only reason why it's not the maximum 10 is due to the runtime. Now, I enjoy films that are long, Godfather, Ben-Hur, various others, but 3 hours is a big chunk of time. And although it's a very enjoyable film and it doesn't feel that long, it's completely enjoyable for the length that it is, it just takes a big portion of time to say I'm going to sit down and watch this for 3 hours plus. And that kind of hurts it, because it means that if you just want to shove it in and have a quick watch of a movie, it's not that kind of film, because you need a significant amount of time set aside for it. Now, that doesn't affect the film negatively, it's just a fact. So overall, it just stops it from getting the maximum 10 for me. So overall, it's a 9 for the rewatchability and entertainment factor. And overall, as a culmination of all of the scores put together, this film gets, alongside Jaws, an extremely high rating of 4.5 out of 5. And were the runtime a little shorter, it could have potentially got a 4.6, but at the same time, if it were shorter, you wouldn't have got as fleshed out characters as we did get. So I'm kind of glad that it isn't shorter, but at the same time it just makes it a little awkward for rewatching it. Overall though, if you haven't seen Stephen King's It, which I think many people probably haven't, it's not as prolific as a Freddy or a Jason or a Halloween. If you haven't seen it, and you are a horror fan, or necessarily not a horror fan, this isn't a pure horror film, it's also a drama to some degree, and a coming-of-age film in many ways, then definitely check it out. It's a quality movie with great acting, brilliantly written characters, and one of the best villains I would say ever created. So, if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it as well if you have seen it, of course, down below. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.